You wake before alarms and feel the quiet sting of things not yet whole, and you ask whether renewal can meet you where brokenness still aches. First light brushes the roofs and turns the air into a soft chapel, a hush where the breeze and birdsong invite you to come closer. You turn to God, your refuge and builder, whose grace does not run out and whose kindness strengthens the weak frame. In this small hour, you lay aside hurry. Open your heart and choose surrender so today's plans can be guided rather than gripped. You let that gentle voice steady your inner rooms and set a true foundation under your steps. Psalm 127 wins, unless the Lord builds the house, your effort cannot hold what love alone can sustain. In dawn's mercy, you are free to stop forcing outcomes and let holy wisdom carry the weight. This is where reconstruction begins by grace, within the heart toward light. What burden will you place into His hands? And what longing will you bring into His care this morning? Now, as your heart grows still, you step into. You begin by telling the truth. You admit a hairline crack within, small perhaps unseen, yet tender whenever the day presses. You recall where strain began, a sharp remark, a delayed promise, a quiet disappointment. You name them in morning air: resentment, fatigue, fear, grief, shame, envy, loneliness. The urge to control. You do not grant these burdens a throne. You simply let them breathe where honesty shrinks their power. Your chest loosens as pretending stops and blame recedes, and you look beneath the surface to the deeper current. Truth in God's presence is never a trap, it is an open door. With each exhale you release a harsh verdict, the sentence you keep against yourself, the perfection you demand from others, the storyline where you must rescue everything. You are not designed to carry what only the Holy One can lift. You picture a workshop at dawn. Sawdust hangs in a gold beam, and a faithful carpenter turns toward a damaged board with patience rather than scorn. Instead of calling yourself defective, you call yourself beloved and in repair. Repair is slower than rush and stronger than denial. You give permission to be a work in progress, not an excuse to drift, but a path for courage. You notice where strain shows spiking reactions. Uneasy sleep, restless scrolling, an edge in your voice, shrinking prayers. You bring these signs into light so they cannot define you. You whisper that you desire wholeness more than you want to prove competence. You invite the Spirit to trace the fracture to its root, not to shame you, but to free you from the loop that keeps repeating. You do this without drama, because theatrics distract from change. You do it with humility, because humility opens you to help. Confession is not groveling, it is agreement with reality and a return to alignment. You acknowledge the cost of denial, isolation, exhaustion, brittleness. You let warm light touch the memory that still stings and notice that sting softens when exposed to kindness. You treat your inner life like something entrusted to you, not a field to be plowed until nothing green remains. You ask practical questions. What conversation must you schedule? Which habit quietly sabotages clear thought? Where do you need counsel? Whom do you need to forgive? Including your own heart. What boundary will guard the healing that begins here? You write one sentence you can carry, a simple prayer to whisper whenever tension climbs. You choose one step, small, specific, repeatable, that cooperates with mercy. A pause before replying, a silent walk, water before coffee, 5 minutes of scripture before messages. Little is not weak. The size of seeds is how gardens begin. You seal this naming with gratitude. You thank God for not despising small beginnings and for bending near when the world expects you to harden. You thank Him for patience that refuses to rush your growth, for wisdom that notices hidden strain, for tenderness that holds without control. You step into today lighter because you neither disguised the wound nor exalted it. You told the truth in the presence of the one who rebuilds. From here, you are ready for a sure base that grace alone provides, because the first stone has been set, honesty, joined to hope. You step from naming fracture to pouring footing at first light, because honesty without a base will sag by noon. You refuse to build on perfectionism or pressure. Those sands shift with every opinion. You choose favor as your ground, kindness as your subsoil, compassion as the mixture that fills the trench. You picture the builder kneeling, smoothing wet mortar, pressing truth into place so stress cannot pry it apart. You agree that solid support precedes beautiful rooms. Feeling may rise and fall, but reliability belongs beneath feeling, and conviction belongs beneath ambition. You let acceptance undercut condemnation, and patience replace relentless drive. You stand where dew clings to grass, and you say, quietly, that undeserved kindness is enough to carry today's weight. You begin again from that certainty. You refuse to rest your weight on applause, panic, or yesterday's failure. You align with a cornerstone that bears real load, not a decorative stone set for show. You let alignment replace strain. You let calibration replace hurry. You give simple assent, let God's design carry what divine love intends, and let structure follow wisdom rather than haste. So Isaiah 28:6 sees God sets a tested, precious stone, secure for all who lean upon it. You place your full weight there, and collapse gives way to calm. You do not sink because reliability lives underneath your steps. You practice the pause slow, even repeatable. You begin this day by receiving, not proving. You accept mercy as provision for mistakes you will inevitably make, and you let pardon interrupt the inner critic before it gathers a crowd. You choose one rhythm that makes room for truth, a brief reading by the window, a quiet breath at the sink, a note on a card you will see at lunch. You let that rhythm tell your body a different story. You are supported before you start, resourced before you act, held before you speak. You trade shame's script for a better blueprint, and your nervous system loosens its fist. You remember that holy compassion is not a pass for apathy. It is power to try again without pretending you never fall. You also pick anchors that protect this base. You decide where to say yes and where to say not today. You adjust expectations so they match capacity rather than fantasy. You ask for counsel where expertise is needed, and you let trustworthy voices inspect your footing the way a builder checks forms and rebar. You forgive yourself for learning, which is another way of saying you stop punishing growth. You forgive others too, because bitterness cracks concrete faster than weather. You allow rest to be planned rather than stolen, and you mark a boundary around early, morning quiet the way a surveyor stakes a lot. You establish small guardrails for technology, food, spending, and speech, because disciplines protect tenderness the way frames protect fresh cement. From this ground, you reinterpret challenge. a deadline becomes a chance to practice order rather than panic. A difficult conversation becomes an occasion to stand on kindness while speaking truth. A decision becomes a step onto something that will not crumble. You carry a sentence with you for the road: favor before effort, design before speed, alignment before impact. Because the slab holds, storms may visit and wind may rise, yet you remain steady. The day can be complex without shaking you loose. You move into tasks without theatrics, into meetings without clamoring, into errands without apology. You live like someone rebuilt from below, and the sound beneath your feet is quiet confidence rather than fragile bravado. You welcome the gentle demolition that preserves what is sound and removes what cannot carry weight. You walk through the hallway of your inner life at daybreak and open each door without pretending. In one chamber you see unforgiven memories stacked like crates. In another, hope sits under a dust sheet. You let morning light fall across them all, and you invite the master builder to decide what stays, what is repaired, and what must go. You agree to careful work rather than a rushed makeover. You allow old frames of fear to be unscrewed, warped planks of comparison to be carried out, rusted hinges of resentment to be replaced. You choose truth over image and endurance over spectacle. You learn the rhythm of restoration: remove, reveal, reinforce. You set down the rubble of harsh narratives. You always fail. You should be father. And you write a better inscription on the studs. Loved, chosen, guided. You sand the edges of shame with gentle confession and fill the cavities with sound teaching. You rewire the circuits of reaction, running new lines of scripture where shortcuts once sparked. You cut a window for gratitude and let the breeze of wonder move stale air. Ezekiel 36:26, God promises a new heart and a fresh spirit within you. You let that vow become your blueprint. You cooperate with tender power that does not bruise you while it renews you. You also tend to the doors. Forgiveness becomes a hinge that swings freely instead of squealing under old friction. You release what poisoned your wells, not to minimize harm, but to refuse a future run by injury. You install locks called boundaries so restoration is not trampled by demand. You line the threshold with patience so you do not drag yesterday's mud onto today's floor. You honor your nervous system with pauses, water, steady breath, a short walk beneath the sky. You make room for counsel from wise voices who will notice hairline stress you miss. You treat compromise like a leak to be sealed quickly, and you celebrate each small fix without mocking its scale. You curate sound within these rooms. Where the inner critic lectured, you invite a mentor's tone firm yet kind, clear yet hopeful. You practice speaking to hidden corners as you would to a dear friend. You are safe to feel. You are strong to act. You are free to change. You choose music, words, and conversations that strengthen beams rather than rattle them loose. You place reminders where you cannot ignore them. A verse near the mirror, a simple prayer on your phone, a sentence by the kettle. You keep your body in the plan, stretching shoulders that carry too much, unclenching jaw and hands, letting sunlight brush your face so your senses learn the story your spirit knows. You walk the finished passageway and notice the difference. Air moves. Shadow does not own the corners. The echo of old accusations grows faint. You bless the kitchen table where decisions are made and the desk where assignments live. You bless the chair where you listen to another's pain and the bed where you practice true rest. You ask that mercy be the beam across every doorway and courage the pattern in every rug. You give thanks that reconstruction did not erase history. It redeemed it, turning scars into strong joints that now carry weight. When the day asks much, you will respond from rooms arranged by wisdom, not chaos. And when evening returns, you will find this home within you still intact, warm with presence, ready for tomorrow's quiet work. You enter the early hour with open hands, the skyline pale as a promise, and you loosen the gripping that made yesterday heavy. Ambition unclenches, outcomes rest, and timelines grow quiet, not because duties vanish, but because control was a marriage that kept your chest tight. You picture a gentle tide over pebbles, each wave drawing fragments back into wider waters, and you let your thoughts follow that rhythm. You set your calendar, your talking points, and your private expectations on the windowsill of prayer and whisper. These are yours. The air feels lighter when ownership returns to love. You agree to be guided rather than driven, led rather than pushed, steady rather than frantic. You welcome a pace that matches wisdom. You begin to trust that releasing the wheel does not wreck the journey. It keeps you from white-knuckled wandering. You reject the myth that letting go equals apathy. Yielding is active, an intelligent reliance that pays attention and obeys the next clear step. You trade frantic prediction for attentive listening, because direction is a gift, not a trophy. You resist compulsive refresh of messages and metrics until you have refreshed your inner life. You ask for a straight path through crowded options, and you accept that clarity arrives on schedule, not demand. Proverbs 3:5-6, you lean with your full weight and refuse to rest on your limited view. You hand over route and timing, and in surrender the road levels beneath your feet. You walk without the old sway between panic and pride, because steadiness rises from reliance. You build small rhythms that keep this posture alive when pressure returns. You breathe a slow count before meetings, allowing quiet to stand between question and answer. And you carry a simple sentence on your tongue. Guide me to the next faithful step. You choose to hear wisdom through 3 chords: scripture, trusted counsel, and providential circumstance. And you do not let any strand shout over the others. You keep your body included in obedience, shoulders drop, jaw unhooks, gaze lifts to horizon, because your frame learns what your spirit knows. You pause at thresholds, doorways, inboxes, parking lots, and practice a 5-second handover, yours to lead. You let birdsong breeze and morning light remind you that creation moves at a pace sustained by love, not hurry. You also practice healthy boundaries, because yielding to God often requires saying no elsewhere. You decline the extra commitment that would drain focus. You accept a slower sequence so endurance can grow. You protect a midday pause that restores clarity and an evening routine that restores joy. You let limits speak for you when people-pleasing tries to volunteer your time. You adopt margin the way a river needs banks to flow with strength. You remember that rest is not a prize for finishing. It is part of the route, training your heart to trust provision more than performance. You give thanks that pausing is not failure, it is faith with feet on the ground. You revise expectations too. You plan with pencil, not chisel. You give projects breathing room and place checkpoints where feedback can redirect without shame. You decide that obedience to the present assignment outruns speculation about 10 moves ahead. You discover that many anxieties dissolve when you stop editing tomorrow and tend to the next right moment. You keep a small list titled, "Not Mine to Carry Today," and you set it where you will see it, evidence that reliance takes practical form. When interruptions arrive, you practice curiosity over complaint and ask, what good work is possible now? You learn to welcome holy detours as part of careful guidance, not proof that you misshot. You step into the street with lighter shoulders. The horizon brightens, traffic hums like a river finding its channel. You move at a human pace. You choose to act decisively where light is given and to pause where fog still holds. You let gratitude mark each action and kindness meet each person. You begin without theatrics and finish without self-reproach, because you follow direction rather than mood. If the day bends, you do not call it failure, you call it guidance by another road. Your palms stay open long after the sun climbs, a quiet sign that you belong to the one who directs your steps with care, correcting gently, leading surely, keeping you free to love the work in front of you. You stand at the edge of morning and feel power return as quiet as dew, not as noise but as grounded readiness. You roll your shoulders, breathe from the base of your ribs, and let calm spread through chest and limbs like warmth across a field. You remember that endurance grows in small choices, not dramatic surges. And you choose them now: unhurried breath, clear posture, a mindful sip of water. You picture your core as a steady pillar and your mind as a clear window. You tell your nerves a new story. You are supplied, not empty, supported, not alone, steady, not brittle. You welcome a pace that is decisive without aggression, focused without strain. You turn toward today's assignments and sort them with wisdom. You place first things first, not because urgency shouts, but because calling speaks with a truer tone. You make a short triage list: essential, important, and can wait. And you keep it within sight so choices stay aligned. You decide to give each task a clean start, a single sentence goal, a modest timer, a brief stretch before the next segment. You limit distractions with simple fences: one tab, one conversation, one table cleared before building another. You remember that real progress often looks like faithful repetition, and you let that reality free you from theatrics. You keep compassion in the plan so output never outpaces soul. You receive resilience from a source beyond hustle and let sacred promise become oxygen for effort. Isaiah 4:31, those who hope in the Lord renew their power. They rise on wings, they run without collapse, they walk without fading. You allow that pledge to recalibrate your pace. You choose the measured stride that lasts beyond noon and the gentle push that protects focus. You carry this vigor into relationships. You speak with clarity that neither bulldozes nor retreats. And you keep your tone anchored even when opinions collide. You ask good questions before offering advice, and you let curiosity soften edges. You practice micro pauses that keep emotions from steering the wheel, and you let kindness set the temperature of rooms you enter. When criticism arrives, you separate signal from noise, learn what is useful, and release the rest without rehearsing it for hours. When praise finds you, you receive it briefly and place it on the shelf, because identity cannot balance on applause. You reserve energy for people entrusted to you, and you guard a little margin for the unexpected person who might need presence more than answers. You treat setbacks like training partners rather than enemies. You adjust form, refine method, and try again with a better angle. You swap all or nothing thinking for iterative movement, choosing next faithful steps over dramatic leaps. You protect focus by tending your body. Steady meals, helpful movement, short walks in open air, water within reach. You let sunlight on your face remind you that provision keeps arriving. You carry a brief prayer into each threshold, doorway, call message, asking for practical help, sharp attention, and a generous spirit. You accept that stamina grows when you act within limits, and you let those limits become your scaffolding rather than your cage. You finish segments with gratitude, not exhaustion. You note what was accomplished, release what remains, and plan a respectful handoff to your future self. You bless the tools you use and the people who collaborate. You keep your yes purposeful and your no kind. You hold today as a gift to be stewarded rather than a mountain to conquer. You leave room at day's end for recovery so tomorrow does not inherit unnecessary debris. You move forward balanced like a runner who trusts the course, rooted like an oak that bends without breaking, flowing like a river that keeps its channel. Strength no longer shouts, it hums within you, enabling work that is excellent, humane, and durable. You go where you are sent with courage and come back with rest still possible, ready to rise again when morning returns. You cross the threshold of morning as one commissioned, not to impress, but to illumine ordinary places with quiet goodness. Streets stir, doors open. Messages arrive, yet you move as a steady lantern, not a flare. You walk into kitchens, offices, classrooms, and shop aisles with a posture that says, "There is room here for kindness." You remember that radiance spreads by nearness, not noise. You keep your tone warm, your pace humane, your attention anchored. You decide that every hallway can become a small sanctuary where burdens feel lighter because you are present. You do not preach with volume. You reveal by fidelity, the way dawn shows edges without shouting. You choose presence over performance in each exchange. You ask names, learn stories, and listen without scanning for your turn to speak. You offer words that build rather than bruise and questions that open rather than trap. You let gratitude color emails, patience temper replies, and gentleness shape boundaries. You practice a 5-second blessing before conversations begin. Breathe, release, ask for wisdom, intend good, proceed. You share resources when possible and encouragement when budgets are thin. You make eye contact with those who are often overlooked and let attention become a shelter. Your errands become ministries of small repair, a respectful tone at the counter, a calm lane on the road, a seat saved for someone who needs ease more than you need speed. Matthew 5:5. You let your brightness be seen so goodness can be recognized and praise return to God. You do not stage the moment, you live it. You carry a steady gleam that points beyond yourself, turning ordinary tasks into signposts of care. You guard this glow with wise habits because dullness creeps in by inches. When cynicism knocks, you answer with truth spoken in charity. When hurry crowds your calendar, you redraw margins so presence remains possible. When criticism lands, you sift it for what helps and discard the splinters. You pause at thresholds, elevators, doorways, login screens, and realign with a whisper. Led me to serve. You keep short accounts with resentment, so bitterness cannot shadow your path. You step outside for 2 minutes of sky when rooms feel heavy, letting open air reset your inner weather. You nourish your body with water and simple meals, so endurance is not borrowed against tomorrow. You remember that boundaries protect brightness. You say a kind no to preserve a better yes. You also bring repair into systems, not only moments. You advocate for fairness in meetings where convenience tempts the room to forget the vulnerable. You design processes that honor humans, not just metrics, and you speak up when silence would keep harm hidden. You use your influence to open a door for someone who has not been given a key. You apprentice others in quiet courage by modeling it when no spotlight is on. You frame outcomes as shared stewardship rather than personal glory. And you celebrate teammates without shrinking your contribution. You carry a builder's echo from this whole prayer, lay a base of mercy, furnish rooms with love, and let guidance set the pace so strength is renewable and service sustainable. As afternoon leans forward, you return to the sentence that keeps your steps aligned. Illuminate, don't dominate. You adjust tone, recalibrate aim, and keep faith with small assignments that cultivate long fruit. You treat interruptions as possible invitations and disappointments as hidden classrooms. You end your efforts with gratitude and hand tomorrow back to its rightful owner. When evening finally gathers, you will not clutch outcomes. You will rest like someone carried, and when another dawn visits, you will wake already sent, ready again to walk bright pathways through ordinary places, bearing a goodness that steadies hearts and points lives toward home. You rise as a quiet lantern, placed where need meets opportunity. You walk at a merciful pace, listen before speaking, and let steady kindness color every threshold. You guard your inner flame with truth, margin, and small Sabbaths of breath. You serve where you stand, advocate where you can, and celebrate others without losing your voice. You hand over outcomes, keep courage for the next faithful step, and end today with thanks. Let your brightness point beyond yourself, so goodness is seen and praise returns to God. Now breathe, soften your shoulders, and step into the day with holy calm.